Are there elements of his technique that you think don't fit as well in the documentary medium?
You know, to tell you the truth, I like how he puts them together. I memean, I like how he uses music and all of that, and he's really entertaining. The only thing I just don't want him to do is take people out of context and make things up. That's the only thing. And I guess I'd also like him to show a bit more both sides. I suppose the traditional documentary filmmaking is showing both sides of things, and you know, even with the whole healthcare film Sicko, I wish he could have just been a bit more honest about what's happening in Canada, but at the same time say, oh, they have great healthcare, you know, but there are some problems. Let's try to look at these problems and overcome them so we don't fall down that same path. And I think that's, again, the nuanced thing between men and women. And, you know, I think I think he's actually said, well, his answer to what couldn't you put in both sides of the argument of the Canadian healthcare and some of the funding problems we're having, his argument is, well, would you rather have your health card or not? Well, that's so black and white. Things are gray, they're nuanced, you know, so don't just put it down to, of course I'd rather have my health card, but that's not the point. The point is put in some of these other issues that we're having, and let's figure out a way to solve them, or you guys figure out a way to solve them so that you don't run down the same path.
And the process of critiquing what you originally felt was an icon that you could look up to in Michael Moore before you made this film, how has the process of unveiling all of these things about his technique and his connections, how has that changed your view of the ability for films to create social change? And what's your view on your films moving forward?
Right. It's funny. I actually realized after watching this one and looking at the sort of the results, or you know, so here's the film and then here are the results, that films don't as much actually create social change as I originally thought they did. And so even with our film, like, you know, what I'd like people to get from it is that you shouldn't just listen to people blindly. You shouldn't listen to your political leaders blindly, or celebrities, or you know, anyone who's having a political effect, who's talking about issues. You go out and you educate yourself about these issues, and then you make your own decision based on what you've read and seen, and you know, you gather together all the different materials and make an educated decision on what's going on, and you know, with the certain issues and debates that are going on in the world. Michael Moore is very, very important in Germany, and he's the #1 bestseller for the last 2 books that he did, even over German writers. And when we showed our film at a documentary festival, people said, this is a really important film, and we're glad that you told us this, because, and then I guess it's because of their history, they said, we have to make sure we don't follow people blindly because of what happened to us with their history and Hitler. And they said, you know, so it's very important to get the facts and not just believe everything you see everywhere and read everywhere. You know, you just have to sort of try and figure out for yourself what's going on. So, you know, and they really were encouraged by our film.
What was your motivation for making your first film? What brought you into documentary filmmaking?
Right. Well, our first film, we were motivated to make junket horror because I was in the midst of being a junket whore, and I felt so disgusted with myself. I couldn't wake up and look myself in the mirror and say, oh, I really want to do this, and I really want to go interview movie stars about why they did this film or that film. And what also motivated me was just being suppressed by the by the Hollywood studio machine, that you could not tell the truth. That's actually also, I think that is another actual theme that goes through our films. It's very important to me to tell the truth and not to be suppressed, and to have freedom of speech. That's so important. And when people tell you what to do or how to think, I can't stand that. So I felt so strongly about the press junket, and I knew that we would no longer be able to continue as entertainment producers, that would be our swan song. But I thought, I don't care, I can't do this for one more second, so that's why we did the film Junket Horror.
I was just thinking about how you said earlier that making Manufacturing Dissent and has really convinced you that films don't contribute as much to social change as you had thought.
As I'd hoped as well.
Exactly, as you'd hoped. And so knowing that and moving forward with that knowledge, how do you, then what is your inspiration for making films?
Right.
What keeps you going?
You know, I'm actually interested in finding out about people more than anything. I guess that's why we've done a lot of biographies and stuff. But I'll answer it in two sections because our next film is actually fiction. So, for instance, my favorite documentary of all has nothing to do with about social movement. It just is fascinating to me. Is the documentary about Robert Crumb. And I was fascinated because here's a character. I've never seen a character like this in my life. Not only him, but his family. All of this. It was just amazing to me, and that I found was more interesting to me than actually sort of talking about certain issues in a way, because I just find people fascinating, and I'm always interested in learning about people. And not only that, but also for me, the documentary, what's interesting about documentaries is the journey you go on. So almost it's a journey for me of going down a certain path and I'm following along, and then I come out another side, and for better or for worse, you learn things. And I think that's why I like nonfiction filmmaking and documentaries. Just it's the journey, wherever it takes you, good or bad. Now, and our next film though is going to be fiction, and it's going to be about the life and times of Lester Bangs. And again, it's another biography, and again about a journalist who was a rock critic for Cream magazine.
Do you feel like there's an assumption that you as a media maker make about your audience? What assumptions do you make about your audience and their ability to discern what you're showing them?
Well, I actually don't think you should talk down to the audience. So I like presenting things that are more gray and more nuanced and more complicated, and people may not like that, but I think I believe the audience has the ability to decide for themselves what they want to think at the end of a film, and you can just present things and they can make up their own decision either way. And it's funny, some people have said, well, you should sort of tell us one way or the other what to think. And I'm not here to tell people what to think. I'm not interested in that. I want people to think for themselves, You have to have analytical and critical thinking. And I don't think there's enough of that. So yeah, I totally believe in the audience and think they can figure things out for themselves.